Hello, welcome to PlayStation Access. My name's Nathan, and I'm here with Dave.
Hello.
Dave, once again, I bring you here to talk about a game.
Yes.
This one is Flintlock, The Siege of Dawn.
Right, and I don't know a lot about this, Nathan.
I didn't until I saw it recently at GDC. I was at GDC, everyone. And let me tell you that it is a Souls-light game.
Yes.
Not with a K, with a T. And what that basically means, we'll go through it in the traditional 5 things format in just a moment, but really that means there's an emphasis on maneuverability and pace of combat.
Okay, that's interesting. You've got my attention.
Well, I will double up with that by talking to you a little bit about the story. And in general, this game is being made by a studio called A44, who made Ashen, which you remember from 4 or 5 years back, was on PlayStation 4. Nobody had a face in that game.
Right.
And this is kind of an expansion of the ideas in that game made by that studio. So it's kind of, that they're an indie studio still, but they're making an ambitious Souls-light game. And the story of that game is basically, this is what caught my eye first of all when I sat down for the demo, gods versus guns.
Okay.
So I did not know, despite being a big fantasy nerd, that more recently there has developed a genre of fantasy called Flintlock, as in the name of this game.
No, I didn't know that.
Which is kind of, I think, sort of Napoleonic era, that technology of guns, basically set in that era. And I think that maybe with themes addressing that of, like empire or colonialism or trade or whatever, those sorts of civilizations clashing at that period of time.
Yes.
Maybe. Not gods being let up from the underworld and then killed with guns.
Well, I'm surprised gods can be killed with guns. This is exciting news to me.
What I like about this game is the metaphor of belief clashing with modernity, because I believe that guns are what gives man the power over gods.
Right, okay.
To kill them. So that's
that's interesting.
And that was when I was in, and I was like, I explained the idea back to them, and they were like, yes,
you've got it.
Well done. And just to flesh that out, you play as a character called Nor, and you are part of a coalition army. So the doors to the great below have opened. The gods have streamed up with an army of undead, and are kind of subjugating mankind. And it's kind of the coalition then comes together and there's a battle for the world. That's the vibe. So that's number one. Number two, we're talking about Souls-like. What sets this apart? There are several things which you will notice from this, the kind of like the RPG, third-person camera, intricate monster design. What is setting it apart from a regular Souls-like experience is the movement. They've talked about extreme mobility.
Yeah.
There is an aerial dodge, there's dodging, there's aerial dodge. You can do a thing called a powder jump, which is like basically a double jump, but it looks cool because you sort of explode.
Yeah.
There is sliding down hills, I note.
Whoa.
I know. And then rift travel, which has got to do with your kind of side character, who I'll talk about shortly. But rift travel is basically you see kind of little tears in space in the air, and you can flow through them as a non-corporeal being, but I think it opens up verticality and like secrets within the world that you can interrupt your travel through these rifts, and they're very colourful and nice.
That sounds really cool, especially for me, because I tend to be in a kind of Souls-like games, more of a dex build. I like maneuverability, I like parries, I like dodging. Mate. I like the timing and the rhythm of it.
Oh my god. And honestly, we've not shared notes, and I'm going to tell you something in a minute which is going to make you lose your mind. So to that point though, moving into combat specifically, and there's like more notes here, there's quite a lot to talk about, but the thing which I will jump in on, because you just mentioned it is in part a rhythm-based combat system.
Okay,
so that
that's cool.
Any encounter it gets cooler, I think. Any encounter that you go into, there are beats where attacks will take place, and they are every 9 frames. So so a beat is 9 frames. So you can, and it won't be that there's an attack every 9 frames, and you'd have to learn different enemies and how they attack and when they attack. But there is like a rhythmic element to it. And then set against that, combat is a mix of magic delivered again by this side character that I've chosen to put at the end of these 5 things, so we can't talk about that.
Okay.
Yet. Melee, there are swords, axes, and that can be like a main part of your attack, and then guns, obviously, because it's called Flintlock, and you have 2 different sorts of guns. There are 3 basic sorts of weapons: melee weapons, pistols, and then secondary firearms, which are sort of chunkier, so they can be kind of grenade launchers or rifles. And they will be used less. So pistols you recharge just with melee attacks. Right. The secondary weapons you have to recharge by resting, again like in that kind of familiar Souls mechanic. Yeah. You also get grenades, and then getting into the meat of the combat, you can parry regular attacks.
Yeah.
And then like in a kind of a Sekiro style, and again like the rhythm element of it feels quite Sekiro anyway, there will be unblockable attacks with a sort of a red dot that you can kind of see on the screen now, where you just know you've either got to get out of the way or interrupt them in a Bloodborne style with a pistol. And as you're fighting, what you're kind of doing is hoping to prime enemies for a critical attack. And there's a bar that you build up, again kind of like Sekiro, kind of whittling down the stamina of an enemy. And if an enemy is armoured, you'll be ripping off a piece of their armour or ripping away their shield to make them more vulnerable, or you'll be actually fully finishing them off.
Yeah.
So that's kind of combat. And again, the plan being you're moving quicker, you have more things available, and it's more accessible. They don't say easier. I think you can put the difficulty up so it's less, but it's supposed to be easier to get into.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
More accessible as a whole. Number 4, Dave. Enki.
I'm sorry, what?
Enki. And you know, it's good that you didn't hear me, because this is the fox-like side character. You see dancing around on the screen, sort of like a wily black little fox. And the team who talked me through the demo from New Zealand, and I thought they were saying Inky because of the darkness
like
of the character.
Black. Yeah.
No, Enki. And Enki is constant companion. I think the animations of Enki are kind of very interesting and will provide lots of kind of. It's just really nicely designed, and you kind of realise that tons of work has gone into making Enki look part of the action, but not overbearing and not annoying. So it's there when you kind of jump, when you rift travel, and then obviously in combat. Normally during combat, Enki will be using a death curse.
Okay.
And basically, as the game goes on and your relationship with Enki develops, his kind of upgradable path is that you would find other curses which bestow different effects on enemies during combat. But this, the default one is the death curse, and you can build up the withering gauge, which is kind of like your ultimate attack. And then at that point you can unleash an ultimate attack, and you and Enki blend into one. And I don't think this is embargoed, and they certainly didn't tell me not to tell anyone, but there was a conversation in the bit of gameplay that I saw where Enki was explaining how he is a god, one of the gods.
Oh wow.
Is it me, or do those statues look like you?
They were probably inspired by one of my visits.
So as you're travelling through the world, we'll be telling you information about the gods that you might encounter. There are some powerful gods that he was talking about, actually, like back in the day. They were nothing. They were scared of me. So interesting to understand that there's relationships, kind of like a whole pantheon thing like you might get in there in Greek mythology. And that kind of brings me to number 5, which is a cheat, because number 5 is gods. And I saw some footage of a couple. We don't have any to show.
Okay.
Very, very little bit. And I loved the design. It was basically, there's a tiny glimpse of it which I'll put on screen now. But there was a 3-sided god creature, and it looked kind of clockwork and mechanical. And it had 3 arms. It didn't really have faces, and 3 legs, and it kind of moved around and could attack you from 3, or like obviously spinning around and attacking you in 3 different directions. And again, I just thought the burden of like cool design when you're saying we're going to make Souls anything is very high, and I'm extremely excited to see what the gods look like. Obviously I can't actually show you, so you've just been watching bits of the world. Apologies about that. And the other things I wanted to mention, just because that's not a full entry, were reputation is your currency, because the idea is it's supposed to it's apocalyptic, so there's no
actual currency.
Yeah, the economy's gone, and that you get a multiplier for economy, sort of for reputation. So as you're going through the world, you gain reputation when you're defeating enemies without dying, and you can cash that in any point, and it will reset. So I guess it has like quite a unique take on the classic Souls-like risk-reward structure. And also that side quests are called rumours, which I just quite like.
That's nice.
And
great album.
Isn't it though? I was trying to think of a pun on Fleetwood Mac, but I can't. So I'll just instead say that the last thing is just that they've designed the game to try and be visually accessible as well. There's just more colour. There's a real sort of purple and orange theme. I mean, obviously Enki is extremely dark, but apart from that, there is more brightness to this than you might expect in, the normally very grey, foggy worlds that this kind of fantasy game exists in.
Well, I've got to be honest, Nath, from not being on my radar at all, this is now very much on my radar, especially everything we said about the kind of dexterity of it all, and the rhythm of the combat sounds really, really cool.
9 frames.
I'm looking forward to seeing Enki. who I'm currently imagining with my mind, but will be on screen now.
Yes.
There's lots of good stuff in this, which has really caught my attention.
Well, Dave, you're right to be excited. I am excited. You know, every time like a new take on the Souls genre comes along, you know, you've got my attention.
Yeah.
This game's going to be out in the summer on PlayStation 5, so we will hopefully deliver more to you before then. Let us know in the comments what you think about this game. Hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to the channel for more, and we will see you soon.